What's going on, my friends? This is Jack, and welcome to It Pays to Write, a show where we break down simple writing skills and systems that can help you build digital leverage and level up in your career, business, personal brand, and more. Whether you're a remote 9-to-5er, freelancer, founder, or aspiring writer, we've got something here for you. Let's dive in. Today on It Pays to Write, I'm very excited to welcome my friend Derek Siddoway. Derek has had some of the coolest, most interesting, and probably widely varying experiences of any writer I know. Most people, for example, don't write a single book in their lifetime, and they'd probably like to. Derek's written, published, and sold 18 epic fantasy books in the last 12 years, and he tells me he's working on his next one right now. He was recently hired as a writer/world builder for trading card games, which I think is super cool. And among that, he's a ghostwriter, copywriter, and social media writing expert who's actively building his own brand and audience right now on LinkedIn. But I think you are going to take a lot away from this episode, especially some tips on getting started writing online, LinkedIn, and potentially even your own book. But without further ado, I hope you enjoyed this episode of It Pays to Write with accomplished author and seriously cool writer, Derek Siddoway. Derek, my friend, this conversation, I feel like, has been a long time coming. And by that, I mean, it's probably only been a few months since you and I started connecting in the comments on our shared following accounts and then through the DMs too. But dude, I've been a huge fan of your posts and the things you're working on. I remember when I started following you like months ago, I was like, dude, this guy is charting some cool things in the right direction on here. But I know some about you. I've got a lot more that I want to learn about you. But just for everybody who's listening today, tell people a little bit about you and your background in writing and some of the cool things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm happy to be on the show. Looking forward to it. That's kind of a where to start question. So, originally getting into writing and kind of my first foray into writing started out when I was, probably, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. And has kind of been a journey since, right? I think everybody that becomes a writer or is interested in writing or discovers writing at some point kind of goes through different iterations of whatever kind of writing they do. And it's definitely a journey and a process. But currently, what I do is I write fantasy books. So I say, they're epic fantasy, but I say fast-paced fantasy with heart. So with heart meaning, not necessarily with like bleeding, pumping hearts and stuff like that, right? But just like with underdog characters that you want to root for, kind of feel good comeback stories, that type of thing. And then also, as I mentioned, fast pacing. So chapter turning or page turning, one chapter leading into another. Not a lot of those big, slow, heavy doorbuster books, right? So I write fantasy. I also do a little bit of kind of some weird things between the intersection of like copywriting and ghostwriting and fantasy. So I do a little bit of freelance work. I'm working with the TCG right now, a trading card game, doing some world building for them. So building out a lot of the lore and stuff for that TCG. They're looking expanding into some different formats. So I've been able to play along. They took some of my short stories, made them into like animated YouTube shorts, which was super cool to see. And then also they're expanding some of their IP into some other areas that I'm helping with. So that's kind of the Venn diagram intersection, right? And then also I've over the years, I've done various kinds of copywriting and ghostwriting, kind of a little bit all over the board. That's something really this year, and kind of the way we connected, that's been a focus of mine to grow and really kind of build out and expand this year. So kind of making a transition from just general copywriting into more of the ghostwriting personal branding space. But yeah, kind of the full spectrum of writing, from fiction to nonfiction and copy and marketing and everything in between a little bit.
Dude, I that cracks me up that that's a little bit, because that sounds like a lifetime or two's worth of work in everything you're doing. And that's what I was so impressed about, man. When I started reading your post, I was like, how does this guy have time to do all the things that he's doing? I just wrote and released my first book. The entire process took like 2.5 years. I used very little AI for it. I just wanted to like do it myself. But man, there's so many things I want to touch on. As a guy who is a former Magic the Gathering player, I was always super interested when I would read. Are you familiar with the game?
I am. I've never played it, but I'm like, I know enough to, yeah.
Dude, also Lord of the Rings, former D&D guy, not like heavy,
Okay.
but had fun playing it. I was always so fascinated, with people like Tolkien or gosh, the guy who authored like Game of Thrones. Like I read the story building that they were doing in Magic the Gathering, which I thought was really interesting that you said you were now doing some like writing to build like world building around a game. How did you get into this niche of fantasy writing, man? This is so cool.
So it's kind of a funny origin story. It started out, like I said, it's probably 11 or 12. Was a big Pokemon fan. That was in the late 90s, early thousands when it was like the thing, right? The thing everywhere.
But yeah, dude, I was
And
all in.
and I really got into, I always loved like fantasy movies, well, mostly just Star Wars. I'm not a huge sci-fi guy, but like really loved Star Wars growing up and then just all kinds of fantasy. Every fantasy book I could get my hands on in the library, like I said, fantasy movies, just loved all of that. And really got into, in those early days of the internet, there were a lot of people that had like self-hosted fan fiction sites for Pokemon, right? And so like just being obsessed with, kind of a Pokemaniac when it was at like the height of its frenzy, just trying to find more content, I guess is what you call it today, about Pokemon. And like they didn't, there was the anime, but this was the, like I said, 90s, early thousands. So it wasn't as accessible. Like we didn't have cable TV in the summer, when I was growing up, because we were always outside. So like, and we didn't have the place I grew up in where I live, like the WB, like Warner Brothers channel that Pokemon was on. Like we didn't have that channel in our market. So like I saw some of the anime, randomly at like cousins' houses or like on VHS, right? But didn't have like the staple of it. So read a lot of fanfics online about Pokemon and like just all over the place. And my writing started out as finding, a couple stories I really loved, and then just thinking about like, well, I didn't like this part and I would have done this different. And it literally started as me like rewriting those just for myself in like a notebook, right? And then that kind of evolved into telling, more original stories that kind of your progression as a writer, especially when you start that young, is really heavily based on your influences and things you're interested in, right? So rewriting and really taking a lot of stuff from other stories, and again, just kind of for fun and personally. Always enjoyed writing in most of my English classes too. Was fortunate I had a lot of really great English teachers too. I know a lot of people blame their English teachers for kind of their hatred for writing, or just like the reason that their writing is boring and like they just can't stand it, right? And that's true, but I had a lot of great English teachers. And then yeah, just one of those ideas. I've kind of worked off and on in high school, and then really in the middle of college got serious about just like finishing the book, right? Because you just said, your first book, and I think this is true for most people, your first book takes so much longer than the next one will, just because you're figuring out, like, it's everything you don't know until you run into it, and then you're kind of like, oh, I didn't even realize this. It's like it's almost like fixing a car in some ways, where you're like, oh, I got into it, and we were messing with the brakes, and then like the fuel pump went out, and it just like, that's how it is putting a book together, right? Because there's so many pieces to it, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And so like spent forever just on that first book, like I said, off and on in high school, not super serious about, but got serious in college about finishing it, and then took about a year to do a decent amount of pretty extensive revisions to it. And self-published that in 2013, in November of 2013, quite a while ago. And then, ever since then, I would say in the fiction realm, it's just kind of been trying to make each book better as far as just improving my writing and things. And, it's not really a linear process. Like my goal is to make every book better than the last one. And, I want them to sell better and do better. But it's, in some ways, I mentioned this, like sometimes when I start writing a book, it feels like I'm relearning parts of the process every time. And just like different focuses and different things, and really kind of experimental. I'll try different things in different books, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And and yeah, so that's kind of the fiction side of things. Like I said, been published since 2013. Most of my stuff is independently or self-published. I do have a few books out with publishers as well. Some are just for like the audio rights or certain things like that. So kind of a mixture of things. But yeah, I've been doing that for, geez, going on 12 years now. And then again, kind of just dabbling out and expanding from that, in a lot of different ways.
That's way cool, man. Like gosh, I'm so we're gonna have to schedule another conversation as soon as this is done. I feel like we could just talk about the book writing side and that skill and compare that to the copywriting and the ghostwriting and some of the other things you're doing. Because of course those skills are tied. Maybe they share a like slightly smaller shared panel in a Venn diagram, but they're still related skills that you're using. So for people who are interested, when did it connect with you of like, oh, I could probably like turn this into an income stream of like
hmm
writing and publishing my books? Like what was that like?
So I've kind of been through a different evolution, I think, than you'll hear from some authors, specifically like book authors, novel writers. In that when I first started out, I got a degree in communication, and then my minor was in creative writing. And so spent a lot of time doing in like the PR world and the communication world too, right? That's kind of like the day job.
Mm-hmm.
Worked at agencies, different things like that. And it kind of transformed or evolved from wanting to write fiction full time into, I've seen, 12 years in the online world is a long time in any space, right? Like, and I'm not that old. I got in pretty young. Like, just going through people that I've seen online and kind of connected with specifically in the self-publishing space, and things really took off with Amazon kind of in 2013 then. And I did okay. Like, you're starting out, it's one of those things where if you could go back and like, I would tweak my covers and things like that and do things differently. Like, they called it like the Kindle gold rush, and I certainly didn't make like tons of cash to retire on. It was definitely a slow build for me. And but it was my goal starting out to be a full-time like author, fiction writer. And then I saw a lot of people who kinda got into a trend that was going on for a while, like publishing a book a month or like 6 books a year even. And like, when it's funny, when I talk on like LinkedIn and stuff about writing 18 books in the last 11, 12 years, people are like, oh, that's insane. And like, you get in this weird space, I think, with anything where the crowd you're in kind of determines what the bar is, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's impressive. And like, I'm proud of it. And it was a lot of work. But I mean, there are authors out there that, previously, like I said, we're doing a full length book a month. And we're talking like we're talking like 80,000 words or more. Um, and so again, depending on the crowd and the space you're in, like, yeah, 18 books is a lot, but a lot of people were at that grueling pace and they were making decent money. There's always the outliers in every niche in every business that are kind of the gold standards. And there were people that from those days in Kindle were raking in some serious cash. Probably, we're talking in the millions in a year, like serious money off of ebooks on Amazon. That was kind of crazy to think about. And then you kind of got everything from there to the spectrum of people that publish a single book and it sells, less than $1,000 in its lifetime, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I saw those people, kind of the uber successful ones, and it was like there was the people. In some ways, it's kind of similar to the music industry. You put out an entire album, but there's like two or three songs that are hits if you're lucky, and you maybe put out 10 albums and have two or three like chart topper hits. And that's kind of true in a lot of cases in the fiction world, at least on Amazon. And there's obviously the outliers, their first book takes off or their second book does. But in general, I saw when you kind of took out the outliers and the one hit wonders and overnight successes, um, and then looked at the people that were consistently making good money doing this, their health was really suffering. They were writing so much, they're in carpal tunnel and tennis elbow. And like behind the scenes, being in those author circles, you just see all these people and like their health sucks and they're starting to get stressed because they're on this book a month schedule. And like they've almost built up this, I wouldn't say it's a sandcastle, but like this glass castle of where if you stop doing that, like the tale begins, right? And I never to kind of quit rambling on this. I was like, I don't want that kind of lifestyle, you know. I don't treat my art as like or my writing as some like holy art or anything, you know. Like I write books on stuff that I think's cool, but there's also a commercial element, and I want them to sell and make money and be marketed to an audience. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to put that much pressure on fiction writing that I'm at the point where I'm like, if I don't crank out another book this month, the bills are gonna not get paid, the lights are gonna go off, and you know, if for whatever reason, like this book doesn't hit with people, suddenly like you're just kind of on these you know, I wouldn't even call them golden handcuffs, but like a lot of romance authors, they're stuck writing the same storyline over and over, you know, and you're making the money and yeah, you can save up a nest egg and get out of that, but it's kind of like in the process, you know, do you want to are you willing to gamble that, or you know, are you willing to make those choices to for the potential payoff? So really long-winded answer to say like, yeah, I want my fiction to make money, you know, and I've done pretty well, like considering the average. And like I said, there's some years where things do better and not. And it's just like writing anywhere else online. Honestly, you know, Amazon has an algorithm for books you publish, and you get sticky in the algorithms, and you go kind of quote unquote viral with sales, and you do well for a few months, and then you know how it is, just like on other platforms, then you're kind of back down to that baseline, and you know you're building over that, but it can definitely be a roller coaster, depending on how you handle production. So that at that point, that's kind of when I transitioned into like thinking, you know, what's writing adjacent, or what are some other things I can do with this? And then lately, kind of in the last year and a half, like how can I leverage these 18 books beyond just selling them to people, you know, online or in person, like at conventions and stuff? And like how to, like, you know, the name of this podcast, like finding different ways to not only use the IP, but to take experience and skills and kind of apply them in a different way, with a competitive advantage.
That's dude, this is super interesting, and there are so many different rabbits that we could chase here. You brought up so many points that I think about a lot as a writer. A, you can definitely work yourself into becoming miserable doing a thing that you used to love for money. I think you also covered something super important when you're producing something like a book or a course or a cohort or a digital product or a physical product. Sometimes the amount you need to produce to reach, you know, escape velocity to like get out of the thing that you're doing, you will work yourself to a point of like burnout and hatred of that thing. So I think it sounds like something, and I feel like I've seen this from you that you've done really well, is kind of diversifying and balancing, like where you're putting those skills so that you're always getting something back from it and you're not draining yourself too much doing the thing. So tell me about this too, man, because I think people listening to this are thinking about a lot of different things. They might be somebody who's like, man, I really want to start like writing online or like building a brand on LinkedIn or Substack, or create my own blog to like write about some interests or pick up some clients or whatever it is. Tell me a little bit about the balance that you have, between, because you said you have a 9 to 5 day job too,
Hmm.
correct? You
Yeah.
have that. You're still doing the fantasy writing. You're also crushing it with the LinkedIn content, and I'm assuming trying to generate some inbound leads for ghostwriting. What does that balance look like for you, man?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's, and you know, there's a lot of different paths I would say up front for people to take. Like, just to be like super frank, you know, if you're happy and you have a lifestyle that you can sustain at 50K a year or 60, 70K a year writing fiction, you can get to that point, right? It's just kind of the balances of trade-offs and lifestyle and what you like and what you don't like. And you know, that's true, I think, for any type of writing. Is there's like just so much attention and focus, and like this is what the content that gets liked about, talking about like copywriters and ghostwriters that are making, you know, tens of millions of dollars, and like that's true, but I try to frame it for people, this is my preamble, I guess, is what I try to keep in mind for myself, and what I also like to tell people as they're starting out, you know, like talking to college students or just anyone that's like, I want to be a writer, is like, if you're familiar with pro sports, you know, like the NFL, for example, or NBA, you need to look at the percentages of people at each step in the game. And it's no different for writing. Like your odds are better of becoming a millionaire writer than they are for most people genetically of becoming a superstar in the NFL. But there's still those steps along the way, right? And it gets slimmer and slimmer. And like that's the thing that I like to, I guess, kind of weigh out or just point out to people is you should be looking at what keep your mind open and don't put a self cap on like what you can earn as a writer. Cause there's just so many different ways to go about that and ways to do it. And keep your mind open to like, don't put a ceiling on yourself, but also realize that like we just kind of talked about for a minute, it's not all just hard work, right? And it's not all just how good you are as a writer. Like there's a lot of great writers that don't understand how to write on social media. And they write on social and it never gets a lot of traction. And there's a lot of authors that are writers, that can go viral pretty consistently and they understand those patterns. But outside of that, maybe they can't do a lot of substance, and that's fine. You can make a totally great living as a content ghostwriter on social media. But it's just kind of weighing out like what your goals are and what you can stand doing, um, if you can stand to write kind of the same style of social posts every day for 5 different clients, maybe you can make 50K a month, right? You can make a lot of money, but at some point, there has to be a little bit of joy and stuff in it. And it's just understanding that spectrum of like, here's the median or whatever, the median range of authors or writers that make X amount of money, whether it's 70 to 150K a year. And then you kind of got the next tier and then the next tier, but everyone just likes to talk about really that elite tier up there. I think especially in the last, like, it's crazy in the last 4 years, 5 years, really since COVID, when like Twitter blew up and had a renaissance, and you hear about like the Dan Coes and the Nicholas Coles and the Dickie Bushes that came out of nowhere, and they're doing awesome, but it's like those are still outliers, and there's like this renaissance of everyone being an online writer, which is super awesome in the last few years to see. Like you still have to kind of keep in mind the odds and just realize like there is an element of luck to every post you write, every blog you write, every book you write, whatever it is, there's an element of luck. And yeah, you can kind of increase that surface area by being a good writer and understanding psychology and things, but that plays heavily into people's trajectories and careers, I think, more than a lot of writers want to admit, right? That there's that element to it. So again, sorry to get on a tangent.
No, this is great, man.
More to answer your question, it definitely got harder after I became a father. So I have two kids, both under the one's about to turn 4 and the other one's just over a year. And that's an adjustment, like just figuring out it's not really a time management thing. A lot of it's energy management, and it's kind of interesting. It's another rabbit hole I could spend like a whole episode talking about, just discovering in the last, like I said, 4 years of becoming a parent. Like everyone's like the gurus are like, oh, set your alarm at 5:30, and do the first 2 hours first. And it's like,
yeah, man. And also hot tub, cold plunge, sauna,
right,
drink green tea. Yeah, all of that. But like before people are awake. Yeah.
right.
Go for it, man.
And at the heart of it, that's good advice aside from like all of the crazy routine stuff. But the thing I've learned, like being a parent, is there's this variable that you totally don't control in this small human. And like it's the roller coaster will drive you crazy, like for example, I can set my alarm for an hour and a half before I've got to head to my day job. And some mornings I'll wake up and knock out, whatever writing I'm doing. And other mornings I'll hit snooze or go back to bed because you're up off and on with kids. And other mornings, like 5 minutes before your alarm goes off, your kid wakes up and they're awake all and like, it's like, okay, where's that 2 hour block? So I think a lot of people talk about routines and they're important and flow states and stuff. But for me, it's really, and like this is a constant battle. I want to make this very clear that like I'm not a superhuman, and like I struggle with the same struggles every day that people do of like, oh, it's 8 o'clock at night and I've got like 3 hours worth of stuff still to do. but it's not worrying necessarily about like flow states. When you get it, it's good, and I think they're great. And when I hit those, um, I guess you can say highs when I'm writing. Like I can get up to writing 3,000 words an hour on a book. Like it's not very often that I have a full hour to work on a book, but like yeah, the flow state exists. But what I think most people, and especially people that have multiple responsibilities of any kind, not just parents, but anybody, like you have to realize that those 15, 20 minutes chipping away every day, and that's a battle too. It's so weird, like human psychology, or like Stephen Pressfield's concept of resistance. Like you can sit there and scroll for 15 minutes, but as soon as you're like, I need to set a timer and write for 15 minutes, your brain's like, no, you got to get to bed, or no, you got to you got to go do the dishes.
There's
And
another thing that you got to do somewhere else, not this.
yep.
Yeah.
So that's like my biggest takeaway is, I'm definitely not superhuman. Struggled off and on, especially the last kind of, really in 2022, partly in 2021, and then even kind of in 2023, and then off and on last year. I don't know if they're different bouts of burnout or just one that kind of comes and goes, but like you have to figure out how you can keep progressing at a meaningful rate, and making progress. And then also just realize that it's chipping away at it and really giving not beating yourself up. I'm in a Slack group with some pretty successful fantasy authors that, most of them do it as like their day job. And it's funny how the same thing surfaces where they're like, I can't like one author was like, they enjoy video games and it's not like they game all the time, but they're like, I couldn't even sit down for an hour and game because I just felt guilty because I should be working. And that's true of any business, but that's not, I think anything that's not physical labor. And that's kind of the benefit of physical labor jobs is you go and do them. And unless your boss is a total a-hole and there's drama, like the work doesn't follow you. But when you're self-employed and just the long list of stuff, and most of the time being a writer at most higher levels, there's a self-employment element. Like that work just follows you everywhere, and you kind of have to just say like it's gonna be okay. Like I don't need to. I really love like learning and studying and talking about discipline, but there's definitely like the dark side of it where you're like you have, you got Jocko on your shoulder and he's like, get out of bed and write. And that's good. But there's some days like you just got to push him off and be like, dude, not today. Right. And it's just funny how that's like, I think for especially writers though, balancing out that hustle culture and just realizing that like the comparisonitis is a real thing too. And it's just kind of those three things, the comparisonitis and not having a lot of context of what other writers are doing online. I think again, since kind of this online writing renaissance has taken place in the last 4.5 years, like people don't see a lot of them don't like to talk about the real side of it, or like, I was um, oh my gosh, first name. Is it Dave Molina? Molina, the like saying
Uh-huh.
cash guy, right?
Uh-huh.
I left a comment on his LinkedIn post the other day, and he happened to reply. I mean, he doesn't know me, like we're not friends or anything, but he replied, and we were talking about how like it would be interesting to see a social media platform that instead of tracking followers, I was like, it'd be interesting if it tracked like monthly income, right? Or his point was like if it tracked like actual IQ. And I think those are two different things. Like one is monthly income because like there's so many online gurus, the Twitter bros have kind of spread out off of Twitter and escaped the zoo, and that are just talking about all this stuff. And one, it may be true, like there's a lot of them, there's some legit people out there, but a lot of them are, again, have good health, have no other responsibilities. And that's cool, in your 20s when you can do that, you should build and you should do all those things. I would certainly redo some of my 20s just knowing what I know now specifically with my writing career, but you don't get to go back and do it. Like I don't envy them. Like I think that's super awesome, but you have to realize if you're not in that situation, that like it's all context and it's all giving yourself, I think, some grace to be like, um, I don't have 3 hours in the morning, or to have 3 hours in the morning means I would be getting up at 3 a.m. And like just having that context and looking a little bit deeper than the post you see or the numbers they show,
Mhm.
to kind of give yourself a mental break, because it's super easy, again, for anyone online, but especially writers, to just be like, put that pressure on yourself, and it leads to burnout and it makes your writing worse. And so, um, yeah, another long rant there, but basically, just to say, like, yeah, I had a post that did pretty well for me a couple weeks ago. It said kind of mini viral, talking about how I wrote 18 books in 12 years. And a lot of it is not keeping up on every single show, not playing as much video games. It's just doing less of that other stuff. And it doesn't mean cutting it out. But it's just kind of finding the balance, and avoiding those times where I'm like, forget this, I'm done, and I'm going to stay up till 1 a.m. gaming, because like you've delayed the gratification for too long, right?
Mhm.
And I know you got some experience in fitness. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like, it's okay to have cheat days, but like, if you're clean for 3 weeks and then you go on a binge for 4 days and like you gain 10 pounds and you just feel like crap, like, was it really worth skipping those cheat
I
days?
know, man.
Same
You would have been
concept,
better
right?
off taking them. Yeah,
Right?
it's like how people eat on cruise ships. I think is kind of like a joke in the fitness industry. Is like you'll go 3 months without having a cheat day, and then you have 1 week on a cruise ship, and you gain like 15 pounds because you're just going to the buffet.
Right?
Like you said, man. It's and I think this is a really hard thing. Like you said, for writers, for anybody who's self-disciplined, self-critical, putting out a piece of work or writing LinkedIn posts or writing books or anything like this. Like social media is the number one cause of comparisonitis. And like, dude, you and I are in the same universes on LinkedIn. Like we see all those people who are like, how I built a $50,000 a month solopreneur ghostwriting side hustle from scratch in, 30 days. And it's like, dude, I feel terrible about myself for like doing it. Like, why should I even try? But yeah, man, I think what's so funny as a human, and you know this as a storyteller and somebody who writes fiction, and also as somebody who's a sports fan too, we love to idolize the best performers at things. But we don't look at all the people who are doing very well and probably not on the radar anywhere. And you and I see this on the social internet. And sure, some people are lying or they're fudging their numbers or they're trying to be the next guru or whatever. But, we were talking a little while ago about like goal setting for writers and like energy management too, especially people who are new to the game. And you mentioned like people need to decide their goal or endpoint. And if there's a person out there who's listening to this right now, or a handful who are like, you know what, I have a day job, I work in marketing or I work in sales or I work in HR, or whatever it is. And they're like, I want to make a little extra income. Like, it's not hard to say like, oh, I want to make an extra $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month as a writer. And you don't have to be, the next like super huge fantasy writer on Amazon to do this. You don't need a book deal to do this. You don't even need like 10,000 followers to use that. Dude, there's plenty of people that you and I both follow, like on LinkedIn, who are people who have like 500 followers, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. And I see these people and they're transparent about their journey. They'll talk about their mess ups too, but they're generating inbound leads for specific people they want to write for, just because they're generating content for that audience and they're doing some cold or like warmish outreach. If they're doing some comments. So dude, how would you speak to that? Like, say, I'm just getting into this for the first time. Like, I'm working in like digital advertising or something, let's just say. And I'm thinking about like writing. I just kind of think like, but man, like we live in an interesting time too, right? Where it's like people are worried about AI. Is it going to outsource and steal jobs? Is it going to do all this? Like one message that I've been really committed to in mission is like, I think everybody should be building some level of a personal brand, because that's going to be your portable security that's going to get you the
Mhm.
next job or the next client, or help you launch a product that you can sell to help other people. Like you, what are the pieces of advice you would give to someone who's like, hey, I know I need to be writing. I sure would love to have a little bit of extra money in my pocket too, because dude, who wouldn't at this point anyways? Life is
Mhm.
expensive. What are some pieces of advice, you being a long time writer, what would you give to that person?
I think that's the honestly best place to start. Kind of going back to what we talked about earlier about just not putting that much pressure on you. Like, don't go quit your job and be like, I'm going to be a LinkedIn ghostwriter like I have that, like now I'm going to start by learning it, but I already quit my job. I already burned the ships. You can do like you said, there's a lot of writers out there that you have no idea are making an extra 10K or anything, anywhere from 1 to 10K a month that just kind of improves their quality of life to do whatever they want with it. I think the biggest thing is don't put like becoming some online thought leader or like a creator on like the pedestal, and don't put your writing on a pedestal. And again, this is stuff that I still struggle with. It's an ongoing journey for people, but it's like you just have to remember this isn't life or death, right? And again, if you're doing this as a side hustle, it's a little different if you just throw everything in and you put all the chips on the table and you're going all in to write. And that works for a very small group of people, but not for most people. But like if you're doing it as a side hustle, like you kind of just got to take a breath sometimes and be like, it it doesn't matter if my post flopped, and like it doesn't matter if like you just don't want to get caught in kind of that emotional quicksand of like can't write and it's not going, and you're like forcing it. And that's not to say like you shouldn't sit down and just write whether you're inspired or not, because you got to do the work. But like people just get so wrapped up in their own emotions on it, and it's seeing the other people doing it. And I think aside from like the people that are like, I run a 50K a month ghostwriting business and I'm the only employee, like there's that comparison. But then there's a lot of people that once you get into the space and you start seeing the people, or you're in maybe a cohort or something, and you start seeing someone that's like you see everyone that's pitching a cohort and a course or stuff. And even the legit people, this isn't like the shady people, the legit people, all of their case studies are always the outliers. Again, it's the outliers, right? Where they're like, so-and-so Jackie started my ghostwriting course 2 months ago and now she's making 10K. And it's like, that's hopefully that's legit and they're not lying. And that's true. Like I know a lot of people that have started out and in their first month or two, like they just crushed it. And that's awesome. But like, that is not the standard. Like that's not the bar, right? That's the outlier again. And you just have to understand that writing is a long game, regardless of how you're doing, whether you're building an audience or writing books. And like, if you're not getting into it because you love to write and you want this to be like an ongoing thing, you're not going to last. Like you're going to get 3 months in, maybe you can maybe force it for 6 months and like be totally miserable. But like, you've got to get in it for like the right reasons of passion or interest, or maybe you have some talent. And as well as I that a lot of times writing's not fun. Like I always forget who says this, but it's like it's a famous author and I can't remember. But they always say, I hate writing, but I love having written, or something like that. And most of the time that's me, right? Where sometimes you get in the flow and you're just like spitting it and everything's great. But most of the time you're just like, I got done writing my post for the week and like I'm done. Like, this is super random, but in like the first Harry Potter movie, when he's like, what's so great about Sunday, Harry, his uncle? And Harry's like, there's no posts on Sunday. And he's like, right, you are, Harry, and I joke with my wife because I usually don't publish posts on LinkedIn on Friday. And I'm always like, what's so great about Friday? No posts on Friday, right? And like, that's okay. There's some days people should talk about that, where it's like, that's the day I don't have to freaking write a LinkedIn post. And,
It's
I
great,
enjoy it
man.
most of the time. And I enjoy like talking with you and other people. But like the days when you don't have to do that, those are nice days too. And that's totally okay.
You
So,
need it, man. You need it.
right.
Like everybody needs, whether you decide to like, hey, I can publish 3 or 4 times a week and I've only got an hour a week to like make those posts, do it. Like if you can post 5 or 6 or 7 days a week and it's not making it miserable, do it. But dude, I think, just like exercise, like we were talking about earlier, you need a day off to rest the muscles so they can build back and come back stronger and more developed. So you're absolutely right.
But I think to like actually get into, okay, like how do I make money doing this? I still think that mindset thing is kind of the most important one, not to get wrapped up in that, because that will ruin you faster than anything. But like if you're starting out, and I've kind of reinvented myself a couple times, I'm still frequently new to, maybe frequently is not the right word, but relatively new to the ghostwriting space, and yeah, I have a lot of like social proof that translates or moves. I mean, like I wrote 18 books, like I can write, and that gives me a leg up and an advantage, but like I still do posts for free for people. I know a lot of writers that are ghostwriters full time, and they're still reaching out to people saying, "Hey, let me put together 2 or 3 posts for you for free." So like there was like the college intern era of like when I was in college where it was like, I'm dating myself a little, but like 2005, that wasn't me, but like I was in like 2010 and stuff where it was like don't work for free and like unpaid internships are crap, and like to a certain degree, yeah, like an actual internship is different, but like if you're just breaking into the space, you're going to have to write for free for people. And honestly, it's much better to be writing posts for free for a potential client, even if all you get is a testimonial, than it is to just focus on just putting content out for yourself. Because you're going to learn so many other things. Like, yeah, your writing's going to improve by doing it for someone else, but like you're going to learn about like how to handle clients and how to write in slightly, different voices and just different structures. And like, that's the big thing is starting out. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to be 2 months in and making 10K a month. Like, again, and most of the time, a lot of those people are probably like, yeah, they struck gold. And that's probably a single client that they lucked out and found. And I don't want to downplay it, but like, their 10K a month is probably maybe a single one-off client that they got for a one-time thing, which that's still super awesome for them. But again, it's that context thing. For most people, I think you've got to start out being willing to do some free posts. And like at some point, yeah, you have to have value, and you shouldn't be like, this isn't to say go on Fiverr or Upwork and be that person that's writing articles for 1 cent for one paying, 1 cent a word. But like you got to be willing to do, I think a great way, and again, I can't remember who said this either. It might have been Gary Vee, maybe someone else. I don't think it was him, but they're talking about being a public speaker and they're like, I have 2 levels. I either do it for free or here's my rate. And there's no in between. And like, you can do that starting out, maybe your rate's down here, like here's free and here's your rate, but like, have something set up like that and be willing to do the free work, whether it's for a testimonial or whether it's a client you really want to get, and realize that like you got to be 100 days in, 180 days, like 6 months to a year. And I think that's something that people hear and they're like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like I can do that. Right. But like, I'll tell you, I've experienced this. I still experience sometimes you get into like month 2 and nothing's happening, and like it's tough to get out of your own head and to keep going in that. But that's really all it is. It's like the bell curve of the Jedi and the guy, like don't get trapped in the middle. Just you've got to be willing to commit honestly 6 months or more to it. And really, I think another thing is celebrating the small victories. Like, yeah, like if you booked a call with someone to do a 20-minute call, like that's a win. I still keep track of every time I do an onboarding call with someone. I have like the whole list, and it's like, hey, like I actually talked to these people, and what, regardless of the outcome, it's reps and it's like next step in the process. And starting out, talking specifically about like social media, your win might be that someone replies to your cold DM and you actually talk to them. Like it could be a win just for someone to reply to your DM. And then maybe the next wins, you get them to hop on a 20-minute call. Or maybe the win is they're like, sure, you can do a post for free for me. And then maybe the win is they're like, yeah, I'll pay you $300 for a single month to do 2 or 3 posts. Like you have to start with those little wins, and remember you're only playing against yourself. And that's true whether you're writing fiction or like any type of writing side hustle or gig that you want to do on the side or starting out. Like you got to play against yourself, or it's really hard mentally to stay with it because there's so much success or even fake success that's being thrown around that it'll just eat you up. And you'll like your logical side of your brain's like, if this is what normal is, why am I doing this if I'm not getting any of the results, right?
You're totally right, man. You're totally right. One thing, gosh, there's so much in there that's just great for people who are just starting out, regardless of the direction they're choosing, the goal, the platform, the channel. I want to come back to you for a second, and then we can kind of round this out here because I don't want to keep you too long. What are your goals specific? Because I think we're in such an interesting window of what LinkedIn is like right now. And anytime I see a new, like, prolific, bright, awesome writer like yourself, like, pop up and start writing on here, I'm always curious. I'm like, man, what got Derek started on here? And what are your goals for, like, yourself on LinkedIn? Like, where are you going with this?
Sure. So to give kind of the quick version, I went from I really assessed, like I said a couple years ago. Uh, I was burned out on fiction, still writing it, and I still do it, but I'm like, I want this to be like, yeah, it's not my day job, but it's also like I don't want it to be the driver of life changing money that I because it's still kind of the same level of pressure, right? And still kind of on the pedestal. So it was like really looking at like I love writing fiction, but looking the time and effort that goes into a book and just like different types of levers, right? It's like spending that same amount of production time. If I do one or two less books a year and then put that time into whether it's copywriting or ghostwriting or something, like it's going to pay exponentially more, right? And so I was in a point where kind of the newsletter wave a couple years ago started doing a weekly newsletter, and I did that for about a year and a half. It was actually it was a weekly Pokemon newsletter. Like I'm still a Pokemon fan, and like just doing the weekly newsletter on the news, and kind of with my own unique voice that I injected into it. Had a ton of fun doing it. And then I listened to someone that was on Nathan Barry's podcast, and again I can't remember who it was, but this was a YouTuber, and he said something I think is really important for writers to be thinking about, and it was that you can in the entertainment space, like you look at like Mr. Beast or even some other people that aren't at that level, like you're going to go so much longer. You're going to go so much longer at this level before you see this, if you ever see this, than you will if you're in like the education space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really butchering it. I'll have to find that. Maybe we can put the link in the
Yeah,
show
man, I
notes.
could
But
put it in the show notes. Yeah.
it was such a great like 5-minute conversation he's having with Nathan from Kit, and just talking about how like you're gonna go along like this, and yeah, you may be inclined, but how much harder his example was like, how much harder is it for like I think he even used like Lady Gaga as an example. So she's selling concert tickets, and like say an average ticket's $300, like for not great seats, like not nosebleed, but not great seats. And she's a superstar, but you think of like entertainers or people in any kind of entertainment space, and then you look at someone who's selling like a $300 like a month cohort, and I'm talking about legit people that can provide the value for it. But it was kind of eye-opening to me that he's like, the education space has so much more upside for so much more people, basically. And that kind of turned me off of, okay, like the newsletter was kind of at a point where I'm like, I really got to go all into this, and again, just kind of suck it up for 5 more years. And after having done that with writing, it's kind of really hard to start over sometime, with being 12 years into a fiction career. I'm like, I know what it takes to rebuild something like this. And at that point, I kind of did, a kind of a self-reflection and journey. And I'm like, I would rather do kind of what we're doing today, talk about writing, help people about writing, or use my writing skills to help people grow an audience and write for them. And like, again, just recognizing that the surface area there, or the potential market, is so much broader and larger than trying to do some of these niche kind of things that pop up. And there's a lot of people that made a ton of money off of newsletters, but writing the intersection of a newsletter I enjoyed writing weekly. The Runway was something I really assessed after giving it like the college try after a year and a half, 2 years, and was like,
Uh-huh.
okay. And so at that point, that's kind of when Twitter was on the downslide, and heard a lot of people talking about LinkedIn. And it was funny, before I had done really like any research into it, I just started posting on there, and it was like, I mean, like I had one post that got like 600 impressions with like just before I had done anything with my LinkedIn. And that sounds super tiny and that's not
Dude,
great.
no,
But I'm
that's
like,
awesome. If you're just starting, you're getting 600 impressions anywhere. That's awesome for anybody
and I
listening
was
to this.
right.
Yeah.
And I was like, this was a one-off. And I mean, I didn't really replicate it and it didn't like go viral or anything. You know, it's not like Laura Acosta where she's like, my first LinkedIn post got 1.2 million impressions. And like, yeah, that's awesome. And you know, it's like, that's awesome for her. But like, again, that's
Not
outliers. And I'm
most
like,
people. Yeah.
right. But I'm like 600 impressions. I'm like knowing what I'd been getting on Twitter as part of the newsletter and like having enough background in the online world to be like, this was okay, but like if I could study this more and get into it, and then really making the pivot to, I spent a lot of time being like, you know, the education space. Do I want to start a course? And, you know, is again, it was jumping from like the newsletters to the course. And I spent a lot of time weighing last year when my youngest daughter was born and kind of figuring out like the game plan, right, on where I was taking my career next. And had a lot of great advice from some people online that were like, courses are harder than they look. And like, and you know, it's not saying that courses are wrong. I was just like, I don't mind doing outreach. I kind of see it as like a challenge. And I'm like, I don't mind getting on a call with someone and like playing to my other strengths outside of writing or things that I just don't mind doing. It made more sense for me. And also like, I mean, I'd been doing client work, like I said, working with a TCG that literally came from me hitting up a YouTuber on Twitter that was like, hey, I'm getting ready to do a Kickstarter. I'm launching this brand new TCG. I'm like, hey, do you need any help with this? And he's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I want to do some short stories like the world building. And like, I mean, I had the background and credentials from as an author to back that up, but it was like, that was one of those like lucky, literally sent him a DM. Literally, he's like, I was just like getting started. This was the perfect time for that. Like, it happens and it'll happen to you listener. Like, you just have to keep shooting your shot basically. But it was like I like doing like the client stuff and I'd kind of been doing that for a year or so and I still work with them. So I was like, I like the client work. I liked it from my time doing PR stuff at an agency setting. And so it's kind of natural fit for me. But again, it's something that still figuring out, you know, still like the nuances and things of not only writing on LinkedIn, but also just like the outreach and um just to I guess sum it up for people, it's like really what outside of writing, how do you really, you know, a lot of people call it like the full stack or what's your stack as a creator, but you really have to think about that and do a little bit of introspection. Like, do I like talking to people on videos? Am I totally introverted? And you can, I mean, you can be a ghostwriter and be an introvert, but um, it's figuring out, do I like sitting in front of video and editing it, or do I have the money to pay for someone to edit my course? Do I have the mental energy to run a cohort or like a paid group? And like think about long term. Again, could I do this for 3 months or 6 months on days when I don't want to do it? Could I still do it? And kind of chopping it up that way.
You're totally right, man. I think something that we don't think about enough is like people think about the outcome or the goal they want. I think Mark Manson wrote about this in Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And it was a great line about, he said he wanted to be like one of the greatest guitar players of all time, I think. And then he sat down and he was like, dude, I just hate playing the guitar. It's like hard on your fingers and I'm getting carpal tunnel and I'm wearing it out and stuff. And I think that's a great piece of advice for people is like, sure, anybody can pick a goal, but you also have to pick a process that you can at least tolerate and hopefully enjoy to be able to do the thing. Because if you don't, yeah, sure, man, if you've got self-discipline like you do, you can stick it out for 6 months or a year and a half, or maybe 2, but it's going to be a slog. You know, it's going to be like what you talked about when you were talking about like high output, like book writing in some of these groups. It is going to be a slog. Well, hey, man, I don't want to keep you too much longer, so I'll wrap up with a couple questions here. First would be just any parting advice that you would have to, I imagine there's a lot of people listening to this because this is going to be shared to my LinkedIn. We're out there on LinkedIn thinking like, you know, I feel like I need to build a brand. I need to start writing. I feel like I might even need to do it on here or like pick a channel or something. I'm not even sure what my goals should be, but I'm hearing AI might take my job. But writing's still this important skill. I don't know how to make sense of all this. What kind of advice would you give to those people as like parting advice for jumping in the deep end with writing?
For sure. And a lot of this is probably stuff I'm parroting or stealing from other
That's what
writers.
we all do, man. We're just synthesis
Yep.
machines for other things we've heard from people we can't remember who said it, dude. I'm the same way.
But I would say the first thing is if you should probably if you know you're a writer or you want to be a writer, again, don't put pressure on it. And then be thinking about, like, this is going to sound super cliche but people overthink writing online or just building a brand online. So, and I'm guilty again. I'll be the first to admit I'm guilty of it too. People just overthink every aspect of it rather than just like doing it. And the first thing I would say is like, okay, what's something I'm super interested in? Doesn't matter how nerdy or random it is. And be like, I'm going to do a post a week on that. And then be like, what's something that like falls into, what Dan Coe says, like health, wealth, and relationships. And that's a broad category if you get creative and really start thinking it. But like, what's something I used to do that I know a lot about, or I still do and know a lot about, that I could write about? And just realizing that you know more than you think you do. And the hardest thing about finding what that thing is that in your mind, you're like, this should be easy for everyone. Everyone knows this. And when in reality, most people are like, I don't get it, or I can't do it as good as you can, right? And do a post a week about that too. And then just throw in maybe 3 or 4, similar things on different topics. And honestly, just starting out, be like, I'm going to do 3 posts a week or 4 posts a week. Don't be like, I'm going to go crazy on 5. Like, I'm more of a person that's like, start out with 3 posts a week or 2 a week, because the goal is to do this for 6 months when you're starting out. The goal should not be, I'm going to do 4 or 5 posts a week, because you're going to do that. And at some point you're not going to make it 6 months, probably. Like, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm trying to set you up for success. And just start seeing, like, you'll notice. And I found this, like, I think it's John Brosio says, like, say it till it prints money. And when you're starting out, it's like, say it until it's very clear that no one gives a crap about it, or that people are like, oh, that's super cool. And like, that's kind of, I don't want to be I wrote 18 books in 12 years guy on LinkedIn, but like, every time I have that in my hook, or that is the topic of
Those
my
posts
post,
crush it,
every
man.
one of those posts is usually my best post that week. And I don't talk about it every single week, but like, I come back to it from a different angle. And like, you'll figure that, like, LinkedIn gives out pretty good analytics for free. Like, you can go into your analytics, just look at your impressions over the last 90 days, go, boom, this was the top one. And literally all it is A/B testing. Be like, I'm going to write in this style today. I'm going to write in this. And just realize, like, it doesn't matter. Like, don't be like super crazy, writing like, I don't know, like murder fiction, like, like super gore slasher murder fiction on LinkedIn, because that's totally not the place. But like, in the educational or nonfiction side of things, like, write about whatever on LinkedIn and be like, I'm gonna do it at whatever posting I can consistently do for 6 months. And like, you'll see signals, right? It's not That's something Justin Welsh talks about a lot, is he just started writing and the people will start commenting. That's another big part, I think, is like, people talk about engagement pods, and like, yes, there are engagement pods, and like, that's a real thing. Like, and some people are like doing paid engagement, and that's like, but what gets lumped into that gets like a black eye is you just personally going out and being like, I'm going to find 10 people that I think are just cool. And that's how you and I met. Like, we just like randomly, the algorithm was just like, hey, two should connect. And like, you don't pay me to comment on your post, and I don't pay you to comment on my post.
It's
But
just fun, man.
You're on my list, man. And any day I do engagement, I'm like, what's Jack talking about today? And I'll go read your post. And if you don't have a post that day, I'll check in again in a day or two. But like, building that kind of engagement list of people you're interested in, don't DM them and be like, hey, let's swap comments. Like, don't do that. Just go out and be like, I've got a comment. I might as well do it on people I find interesting. And like, over time, you'll just build that relationship, and like, you'll meet other people, and like, you'll see other comments, and it builds out from there, But like, that's one thing that not a lot of people talk about is Like, don't just go out and be like, I'm going to find Justin Welsh and Gary V on LinkedIn and comment. Like, yeah, if you're doing certain things, and like part of strategy and tactics as ghostwriting is we do a lot of commenting on big accounts. But like, if you're just starting out as a writer and you don't know what you're doing, like just find some people that you find interesting at any level, especially people that are like around where you're at, a couple hundred followers or connections, and like start at that point and just be a normal person, like having a conversation like that's really all it comes down to when you cut out all of it, and you can build on it from there and get more advanced. But like starting out, post about 4 or 5 topics that you're like, I'm interested enough in this that I can talk about it. And I mean, it could be anything, like, that like it doesn't have to be something where I'm going to be like, I have to talk about this every week, but do some random one-offs, um, and see where the impressions go. Like if you know that you want to be a ghostwriter, like start following the type of people you want to ghostwrite for. And again, just be normal and commenting on them. Don't try to be like, I'm going to scale to 10K this month. Like spend 6 months just like learning how to write. And there's so many other random tactics and hacks that we could talk about to become a better writer. But like, just keep it super simple. Like if you have 20, 30 minutes a day to work on your brand and work on being a writer, like set up a system that you can go, oh, I checked that off the list. Like James Clear always says, like make it the tiniest, easiest thing, and think about, could I do this on autopilot or blindfolded for 6 months? And really that's the start. And you get to a point where like you and I, where you got to kind of grow past that. And there's a lot of days you just got to pull teeth and get the work done. But like starting out, just set yourself up for success, is my biggest takeaway. Just be a normal person and don't overthink what you're talking about. Like if it's LinkedIn and you're worried about what your boss or your coworkers think, like, yeah, maybe filter it a little, but like everybody out there knows something random about weird things, that's like random trivia or something. Or like if you're already on Substack or LinkedIn, go look at the people you follow and be like, well, why do I even follow them? What am I interested in? If it's politics, probably find something else, right? That's not really the place on LinkedIn, but like, yeah, just start talking about random stuff. I mean, I still like, I do a post. It's like, I've done it around Halloween last year. I'll do it again this year. It's like one of the theme songs from the original Pokemon game. There's like this creepy pasta about the Lavender Town song. I always do a random like thread post about it at Halloween. And like, I don't talk about Pokemon at all on LinkedIn other than that. But like, it's the people that I follow and I'm interested in that are like, just do like, I just saw a post the other day about someone that talked about the NBA finals. I'm not a big NBA guy, not a big basketball guy, but it's like, that's so much more refreshing to see that every once in a while than just like, yeah, you got to do your bread and butter posts about like, you got to do those ones too and kind of take your medicine. But like when you're starting out, especially, have a little fun with it. Don't worry if you don't sound or like everything's not exactly like everyone else does. And still probably, I mean, I am a relatively small account. Like I've got like 1,200, 1,300 followers. But like I usually do one post a week that's kind of like experimental, in that maybe the graphics kind of different, or maybe I'm just going to write it in a different voice. And like, to me, that's part of what keeps me doing it, is I'm just going to throw this out there. And if it does well, be like, okay, let's do more of it. If it doesn't, at least it kind of mixed it up for me and kind of gives yourself a little bit of, a chance to use those creative juices, to get outside of the templates and copying what works. And that's important too. You got to take your vitamins, but you got to have a little fun along.
100%, man. It's like you were saying earlier about cheat days, or we've talked about with exercise, is like showing personality in your posts not only tends to perform really well, but it's a lot of fun to write. Like, dude, I saw the one that you posted, was it today or in the last couple days, about baling hay, and you were out with like one of your kids, and I was like, dude, this is such a sick post, because like people want to see those cool little spotlights and shares of like your life, because it makes you a real dude. It makes you likable. It's like, oh, sweet. Like Derek's not just like a writing machine who like pumps out books and amazing posts, and he's doing the ghostwriting thing. And I think that could almost be your treat for yourself, or a treat to yourself, in a way of like, okay, I've been harping on, like me, SEO, writing with AI, marketing or branding like all week. What am I going to write about? Like over the weekend, I wrote a post and I thought probably nobody would be interested, but I'm really into the non-alcoholic beer brands that are out there. I love Athletic Brewing, dude, Liquid Death with its whole like rock and roll counterculture marketing vibe. Absolutely love them. And the post did really well. And I had some cool conversations with people who were like, dude, yeah, I love this brand. It's sick. And I was like, yeah, same. And yeah, it's just like post.
I didn't even see that post, but I totally love. If you had Klaus Holler, like we won't go on a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, I have had them.
Klaus Holler in the cans, the bottles it gets warm too fast.
Yes,
but in the cans in the summertime, oh my gosh, that's amazing. It's like random stuff like that. Like I'm not an NA beer hobbyist, but like just throw that out there and like we've known each other for like what 6 months now. And we just ran into something else that we're like, hey,
I know, sick, dude. Yeah, we both like that. Yeah, man. I think that's such a great point. Of you've brought up so many pieces of advice of like, hey, yeah, you got to put the reps in. Make sure the bar is low enough that you can hit it. Make it manageable so you don't hate it. And also like build in, like pat yourself on the back for victories. I love that, man. I don't think about enough as somebody who's like pretty self-critical and motivating myself to do this. Like, dude, I was falling asleep, like punching in comments from the couch last night while we had reality TV shows on in the background. But yeah, man, like I think keeping the bar low, like 15 minutes to write a post, just ship it and publish it. If you feel like writing longer and you've got the time and you get into flow or whatever, I always tell people that's bonus points. Like just do it until you enjoy it and then stop, post the thing and get out of there. Well, dude, you have had so many great pieces of it. Dude, anything else, man? This has been, I'm going to have to bring you back on here. There's so many other things that we could talk about, dude. But any other advice you can think of for writers putting themselves out there on LinkedIn or anything? And if not, I want to make sure everybody has your links and where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. No, this has been awesome. I'd love to come on and chat again. Hopefully we kind of went all over the place. So hopefully somebody finds something interesting in this. And like, if you're listening and, hit up Jack on LinkedIn or hit up me. I'm just Derek Siddoway on LinkedIn. Like I think I'm there may be one other one, but I think that's about it. Like I'm the only bald one. So like, you'll know it's me, right?
You're the guy, dude. I put you on Amazon and you came right up. So go check out his books. But yeah, go ahead, man.
Like, yeah. And if you're just listening now, like, yeah, the bald Derek Siddoway on LinkedIn, like shoot me a DM, shoot me a connection request. Let me know like, hey, I heard your podcast. And like, I'm an open book to talk about stuff. I'm on Substack. I have a very irregular newsletter on Substack called Binge-Worthy Writing that it's kind of still like figuring out what it is, but happy to talk to anyone with anything that hits me up that that they hit me up with any questions or anything. But the biggest thing is just don't get like wrapped up in it, and again, this still happens to me where there's some nights I'm like, I've been here an hour and a half and I've written one post. And it's like, if you're at that point, you gotta like you gotta get away from it, like, and the other thing is maybe just hitting on that element of luck again. Like it happens at everyone at every level and it never stops happening. Like 2 weeks ago, I spent almost 2 hours breaking down this epic email from Justin Welsh. Had like a 50-page LinkedIn carousel. I mean, like I went all in and I'm like, dude, this one's it's gonna do well. I never put in my head that this is gonna go viral, but I'm like, this is gonna do well. And it did above average. The next day was the post I said where I threw out that one where it was literally, I was like, how I wrote 18 books in 12 years. And it took me 20 minutes to write. Maybe. It took me longer to scroll through my phone to find the picture I wanted to use than it did to write it. And that thing did like exponentially better than any post I've ever done. I mean, we're not talking about like mega viral, but like you just need to remember that. And again, just don't take it so serious. You never know what's going to hit. It's not life or death. And like, yeah, if it's LinkedIn, there's some boundaries. And if you have a day job, like don't be posting something crazy that your boss is going to see, or, maybe unconnect with your boss, whatever. But like
ghost them on the weekend on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Just keep it lighter and don't put so much pressure on it. Again, really comes back to like, make it so you can have fun, or at least you get in that gamification where I'm like, I wrote for 10 minutes a day and I've done it for 6 months. Like you're going to get so much better doing that than starting out being like, I'm going to do 5 posts a week and I'm going to do it for 6 months. So
you're totally right, man.
Not really wrapped up or summarized. Like if this was a LinkedIn post, that would be a terrible a terrible CTA and wrap up
Nah,
at the
man, it'd be a
end.
good carousel though. It'd be a great carousel. But you know, man, you're so right. Like I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm sure you have too. There's accounts I follow where you can tell they're like doing 2 hours for a post or a carousel, and I'm like, dang. And then there's other people I follow, like Matt Barker is one of them. I think we both follow Matt. Dude, Matt's like prolifically posting all the time. He probably posts a couple times a day. His templates are simple. His formats are simple. He's got a plug and play thing he's doing, but all of his stuff is great. And he's a guy who's the definition of like, I'm just going to focus on reps and I'm going to focus on shots on goal. And I'm not going to try to make every shot on basket like perfect. And dude, I think about a lot of like, you could spend 6 hours a week making 3 carousels that are really painful, or you could spend an hour a week spending 10 or 15 minutes on 6 or 8 posts and post those. And I honestly think the high rep way for a lot of people is the way to go, dude, because like putting together as a guy who started in blogging and SEO, like writing and publishing a well-written optimized blog post is agonizing. I think for most new writers, they'd be better off being like, I'm going to write a 100-word post every single day, like 6 or 7 days a week, but I have to have it done in 20 minutes. Like I'm setting a Pomodoro timer. But yeah, man, go for it. You were going to say, I don't want to miss any tidbits
I was just
here,
going to
man.
say, I've come to like, I know you are big on writing with AI. I'm definitely not anti-writing with AI, but I've come to realize like with the last 2 months, it seems like the templates have exploded, right? Where everyone's got a prompt and a template. And template writing is great, but I guess my last caveat before we wrap up would be if you're just starting out, like find someone who did well, that did a post that you like, and copy that format. You can do copy work and write it by hand, or you can just have it up on one screen and your post over here, copy the same sentence structure and everything. Like you're going to learn more doing that than you are doing plug and play with templates. Like I think there is a place for AI with writers. And like I said, I'm definitely not saying that there isn't, and I use it. But there's even times, when I get like, again, so wrapped up in like the AI is not doing what I want it to, that I'm like, I'm just going to go write a post, and like I'll bust a post out in 15 minutes. And so I guess that's maybe one last caveat is like AI is the hot thing right now. AI can be helpful. I would say AI is a better like interviewer for you to be like, hey, I'm a brand new author. I don't know what to write about. Can you help me? Will you interview me? And like the AI is going to say something, I'm assuming, that's like, sure, like, what did you like when you were a kid? What's something you're good at? And like, it's just going to feed you questions until you get the wheels turning. I think using that is going to be more helpful to you starting out than being like, okay, I just joined someone's newsletter, and I'm definitely not dissing on prompts and stuff, but I'm like, here's my prompt to write like a 5-page carousel. Like if you're just starting out, you got to do the reps yourself. And AI can be like a writing coach for you. I think it's great when you finish a piece to plug it in AI and say, here's what I was trying to do. How did I do? Or here were my goals. How do I do? Then revise it and use it as your editor or your writing coach or critique. That's fantastic. But like starting out, if you're brand new as a writer or just even trying to level up, don't just default to like, again, that you're in a different space if you're posting 6 posts a week and you're like a content machine, and some people's businesses rely on that and they need it. But like starting out, don't just give that, like you got to put in the reps, like again, like we talked about, think about it like the gym. You can't go to the gym and be like, Chat GPT, I want you to do, 3 sets of 8 reps of curls for me.
Yeah.
And then like, you're not going to get biceps. And honestly, as a writer, if you're starting out, you're not going to build the skill. Like you kind of put in the reps. So again, AI is super useful. I use it almost every day. I'm not to the everyday point. I use it with my fiction stuff a lot of the time. I use it in pretty much anything I do writing related. But again, like I'm 12 years into this, and you don't have to be 12 years in to be at that level. But like, even in, as I've kind of focused more on LinkedIn, again, I'm still kind of balancing between getting in the reps and doing it myself until I'm better, or until I can, I'm consistently hitting it, rather than just being like, I'm going to ship 2 more posts this week. Let's figure it out. Like you got to know how it works and the why. And that doesn't mean not to use it again, but be thinking more outside the box than AI shouldn't be your content creating machine. If you're a brand new writer, it should be your writing coach, or it should help you to figure out what to write about. And it's one of those great things that, like, if you're ever stuck, ask it to interview you on writing topics that people would find interesting, and or to revise your work and edit it. Like, really, really last thing, like I'm probably with my next book, I'm still going to have a human editor, a human developmental editor, and, copy editor, but it will probably have gone through 2 AI edits before it gets to that point. And again, that's not because it's replacing them. For some people on a budget, maybe it will. And, there's different settings and things, but like, I want it to be in a case where I'm like, I've given a super clean copy to these people, and now they can just like really finish it. And again, it's leveling up with each book, leveling up with each post. So recognize where you're at on the journey and kind of be honest enough with yourself to go, okay, like I need to know what I'm doing before I can tell the machine to do it for me.
100%, man. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, people need to build the muscle. They're not going to know the why behind the what of like why something worked or why something didn't if they don't build the muscle as a writer first. And to your point exactly, I think I wrote all my own posts 100% myself for the first 6 or 7 or 8 months on LinkedIn, because I was like, I got to figure out how people write on here. I want to find out what's hitting, what's not, why. And I need to put a lot of shots on goal in my own voice and tone and whatever to kind of figure this out before I bring a coach into this that's going to help me, give me feedback. Because there are plenty of days like you have too. You go to the AI and you're like, dude, I feel like I'm fresh out of ideas. And you brought up like pick 4 or 5 topics, like ask the AI, like, hey, you know what my 4 or 5 like content pillars are? What's something that I could write about? Is there something going on in the news with like SEO or AI updates or, fantasy or fiction or whatever? But yeah, man, thank you so much for saying all that. I think people are going to walk away from this today with so many great actionable tips, whether they're midway or a long way into their writing journey, or they're thinking about just starting and picking this up on LinkedIn for the first time. So yeah, man, I will drop all of your links and notes and stuff in the show notes. And Derek, I really appreciate having you on, man. I've had a blast talking. I'm glad we got to chat about NA beers and stuff too. And I can't wait to have you back on here. We can talk more about AI. I can't wait to hear about how this next book is going. You're growing like crazy on LinkedIn. And yeah, man, I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. See you next time.
Thanks, Derek. See you, man. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of It Pays to Write. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to like and subscribe. You can find us right now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Substack. Also, I've got something extra special for you listeners today. If you're ready to take the plunge into online writing, I have a free 5-day email course on how to write with AI to help you get started. You can get my free 5-day email course at AIWritingRoadmap.com. That's AIWritingRoadmap.com. Thanks again for listening to It Pays to Write, and I'll see you in the next episode.